My husband called me a youthful mistake at the company party. 24 hours later, I showed him exactly what kind of mistake I was. Welcome to the Life's Turns channel. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We're always curious. We hope you enjoy this captivating story. Zahara stood before the full-length mirror in the master bedroom, slowly fastening her earrings, small pearl drops, a gift from her mother long ago. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried not to show it even to herself. Tonight was the corporate gala for the high-powered advertising firm where Akili worked. His agency, his success, his evening. She, as usual, was just an accessory to the picture. Hanging in the closet was that sleek, dark sapphire dress, elegant, reserved, the one Akili had once approved with a terse, "It's fine," not too flashy. Zahara ran a hand over the fabric, feeling the cool silk beneath her fingers. The dress was beautiful, expensive, but utterly forgettable, much like she felt she had become in recent years. "Zahara, you almost ready? We have to leave in 30 minutes. Akili's voice boomed from the bathroom. "I don't want to be late. This is a huge night, you understand?" "Yes, almost done," she called back, pulling the dress over her head and zipping the side. A huge night for him. Akili's agency, Velocity Media, had just closed a major contract with a Fortune 500 tech company. 6 months of intense negotiations, pitches, and stress. Now it was time for the triumph. Zahara knew her husband would be the center of attention, accepting congratulations, dazzling everyone, talking about his achievements. She would stand nearby, smiling and nodding, waiting for someone to politely ask, "And what do you do?" And what would she say? "I'm a domestic engineer. I'm Akili's wife." 20 years ago, she had her own plans. Zahara had graduated top of her class from Howard University with a degree in interior design. She dreamed of opening her own studio, creating spaces where people felt comfortable living. But then she met Akili, an ambitious, energetic marketing student, and fell head over heels. Back then, he promised they would build a life together, that he believed in her talent, and that he would support all her ventures. For the first few years, he did. They rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a less-than-prime neighborhood in southeast D.C. They both worked. Akili started his career at a small boutique agency. Zahara worked as a designer's assistant. In the evenings, they would sit in the kitchen, drinking cheap $2 wine, dreaming of the future. Akili would hold her close and whisper, "We can do anything, Zay. You'll see, in 10 years, you'll have your own studio, and I'll open my own firm." But life intervened. Akili's career took off fast. He was a talented closer, skilled at finding clients, persuading them, and selling ideas. Within 5 years, he was heading a department, and 3 years after that, he opened Velocity Media. The money poured in. They moved into a sprawling condo in Buckhead, Atlanta, bought a luxury SUV, and started taking vacations to places like the Bahamas and Dubai. And somewhere in the rush, Zahara's dreams simply dissolved. First, Akili asked her to help with the agency's paperwork. "Zay, you're home. You have more time." Then it was organizing meetings, scouting office locations, designing the office itself. Zahara worked for free, for her husband, for their shared future, as she told herself. One evening, Akili suggested, "Listen, why don't you stop working altogether? Why run all over Metro Atlanta with a measuring tape dealing with other folks' cramped apartments? We have plenty of income. You focus on the house, on yourself. I want the wife of a successful entrepreneur to look the part, not like some stressed-out sister hustling a second shift." At the time, those words sounded like care. Zahara agreed, quit her job, and slowly, without realizing it, became the polished, beautiful accessory to Akili's life. She managed the condo, prepared meals, went to the gym, the esthetician, the stylist, greeting him with a smile after work. She didn't argue or object. She was convenient. Akili walked into the bedroom, buttoning the cuffs of his pristine white shirt. He looked magnificent. The custom-tailored suit fit his toned physique perfectly. His hair was neatly faded and coiffed, a light scent of his expensive cologne filling the air. At 45, he possessed the confident, well-fed swagger of a successful man. "Oh, you're wearing that dress," he muttered, glancing at his wife. "All right, it's fine. Just don't overdo the makeup and try not to look bored tonight, okay? There will be important people there. I don't want them thinking my wife is dying of boredom at the gala." Zahara swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. Such remarks used to hurt. Now she just let them pass, like irritating background noise. The restaurant hosting the gala was one of the most exclusive in Midtown Atlanta. Panoramic windows overlooking the evening city lights, soft ambient lighting, waiters in white gloves, and flawlessly set tables. Around 30 guests, agency staff and their partners, clients, and partners were gathering, all dressed up, animated, with glasses of champagne in hand. Akili immediately dove into the crowd, shaking hands, hugging colleagues, laughing, and accepting praise. Zahara stayed close, smiling when necessary, answering polite questions. The wife of a major client, a stately woman in her late 50s, asked, "Zahara, darling, what's your hustle? Are you in media too?" "No, I'm a homemaker," Zahara answered, the phrase feeling rote. "Oh, how lovely. So you have time for your home and maybe a garden? I haven't worked for maybe 10 years, and honestly, it's a blessing not to be tied to a schedule. You can do whatever you want." Zahara nodded, but inwardly she flinched. Do whatever you want. She'd forgotten the last time she did something she wanted, rather than what Akili needed or what was convenient for the house. At the main table, Akili was seated at the head and Zahara was next to him. He was in his element, cracking jokes, entertaining guests, sharing industry anecdotes and stories about tough clients. Everyone laughed, hanging on his every word. Zahara sat silently, sipping her champagne in tiny sips and smiling at the appropriate moments. The director of the parent company, a large silver-haired man with a booming voice, rose with his glass. "Friends, tonight we're celebrating not just a successful deal, but a genuine breakthrough for the agency. And it's all thanks to the talent, persistence, and incredible charisma of our Akili. Let's raise a glass to him." The room erupted in applause, everyone turning toward Akili. He stood up, feigning modesty, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Thank you, my friends," he began. Zahara felt a tightening in her chest. She knew this tone. He was about to shine, to deliver some eloquent words, and everyone would be captivated. "You know, success is always a team effort," he continued. "Without you guys, I would have achieved nothing. You are the best team anyone could ask for." Applause, affirmative cheers. Akili paused, scanned the room, then shifted his gaze to Zahara. Something mocking flickered in his eyes. Zahara instantly felt that something was wrong. A chill ran down her spine. "And also," Akili went on, the smirk on his face widening, "I want to raise a glass to my wife, my Zay." He lifted his glass higher, and everyone turned to her. "To my youthful mistake." The ballroom exploded in laughter, loud, genuine, and joyous. Someone cheered, others clapped. Akili beamed with a smug smile, clearly proud of his sharp wit. He looked at Zahara, expecting her to laugh too, to play along with the joke, as she always did. She always backed his jokes, even when they were aimed at her. But this time, something inside Zahara didn't just break. It shattered, like thin ice cracking underfoot. She sat with a frozen smile, a glacial cold spreading through her body. A youthful mistake. That was what he called her. In front of his colleagues, his partners, strangers, 20 years of marriage, 20 years of giving up her own dreams for his career, 20 years of forgiving his infidelities. Yes, she knew about that secretary 3 years ago, and that client he took on a business trip. 20 years of pretending not to notice how he respected her less and less, seeing her more and more as beautiful furniture in his house. And now, a youthful mistake. Zahara raised her glass and smiled. No one noticed the smile didn't reach her eyes. She drank the champagne in one go, the bubbles stinging her throat, and that physical discomfort seemed to sober her up completely. The dinner continued. Achille was pleased with himself, still joking and soaking up compliments. A couple of times he patted Zahara's shoulder, as if to say, "Don't be mad, it's just a joke." She nodded, smiled. Inside her, a strange detachment was growing. It was as if she were watching everything from the outside. A young agency employee, a bright-eyed woman in her late 20s, sat next to her. She leaned in and whispered, "Don't pay him any mind. Men are like that. They don't think before they speak. My man says stuff sometimes, and then he's surprised when I get offended." Zahara looked at her. Young, full of plans, probably building her career. She had her whole life ahead of her. And suddenly, Zahara clearly saw herself 20 years ago, just as naive, just as in love, ready to do anything for a man. She felt an unbearable pity for that former Zahara. "Thank you," she replied softly. "I'm fine." But nothing was fine. Something inside had irrevocably changed. The evening dragged on endlessly. Zahara mechanically ate, drank, and answered questions. At some point, Achille became engrossed in a conversation with a partner about a new project, and Zahara slipped out onto the restaurant balcony for air. The city below glittered with lights. A cool wind ruffled her hair. She stood gripping the railing, thinking, when had everything shifted? When exactly did she stop being a person to Achille and become merely a part of his successful life? When did he start allowing himself those barbs, those dismissive remarks? And, most importantly, when did she allow him to treat her that way? Zahara remembered wanting to sign up for design classes a year ago to return to her profession. Achille had laughed then. "Why would you do that? You haven't worked in 20 years. Who's going to hire you? You should focus on fitness instead. You've put on a little weight lately." She had stayed silent then, hadn't signed up. She went to the gym instead. She remembered offering to take a weekend trip to the Appalachians together 6 months ago, just the two of them, like old times. Achille had brushed her off. "No time for romance right now. My project is on fire. Besides, what would we do up there? You're not the same girl who could sleep in a tent anymore." Each time she swallowed the insult, convinced herself it was minor, that family and stability were what mattered, that all couples went through this. But tonight, a youthful mistake. That was the final blow. She returned to the room. Achille didn't even notice her absence. Zahara sat in her place, finished her champagne, and was suddenly struck by a strange calm. The decision was made, final and irreversible. She wouldn't make a scene, wouldn't scream, cry, or demand an apology. It was pointless. Achille wouldn't change. He genuinely didn't understand that he had done anything wrong. To him, she really was a mistake, one he'd grown tired of, but divorcing her was too much effort and too inconvenient. Well, she would show him what kind of mistake she was. The gala ended after midnight. Achille, quite drunk and utterly satisfied, chattered the whole ride home. "Did you see how it went? Fantastic! I have a feeling this contract will open the door for us in Europe. Maybe we'll even open an office there. Can you imagine, Zay? Are you listening?" "Yes, I'm listening," she replied quietly, looking out the window at the passing lights of the night city. "And stop pouting over the toast. It was a joke. Everyone laughed. You've lost your sense of humor completely." Zahara remained silent. Sense of humor? No, Achille, she hadn't lost it. You just haven't been funny in a long time. At home, he stumbled into the bedroom, collapsed onto the king-sized bed, fully dressed, and was snoring within a minute. Zahara stood in the doorway, looking at him, this stranger she had spent 20 years with, and felt nothing. No love, no hatred, not even hurt, just emptiness. She turned and went into the kitchen. She boiled the kettle, took out her favorite mug with the blue forget-me-nots, her mother's, and sat down at the table. The condo was quiet, only the ticking of the wall clock and the hum of the kettle breaking the silence, and Zahara began to plan. Zahara sat in the kitchen, cradling the hot mug of chamomile tea. The wall clock read 1:30 in the morning. Achilles' steady snore resonated from the bedroom. He was in a dead sleep, as always after heavy drinking. Usually on such nights, Zahara would go to bed, swallowing her resentment and convincing herself that tomorrow would be better. But not tonight. Tonight, she felt a strange clarity in her head, as if the fog that had obscured her vision all these years had suddenly lifted, a youthful mistake. The words echoed in her ears, but no longer caused pain. They were the catalyst, the trigger for what should have happened long ago. Zahara sipped her tea, set the mug down, and opened her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She logged into their joint bank account. The primary account, where Achilles deposited the money for household expenses, showed a substantial six-figure balance. He loved controlling the finances, gave her a debit card with a low monthly limit, and checked her spending every month. Where did that $2,000 go? Why are you spending so much? Those arguments happened regularly, and Zahara always justified herself like a schoolgirl reporting to the principal. But what Achilles didn't know was that not all the money in that account was his. 3 years ago, Zahara's grandmother had passed away, leaving her an inheritance. Zahara had sold the small townhome in South Carolina, and the proceeds, almost $100,000, she had put into their joint account for the down payment on the Buckhead condo, where they now lived. Achilles had said, "Perfect. We'll invest it in our home. It's joint property anyway." Joint. Yet the condo was titled only in his name, Achilles Smythe. Zahara scoffed. How blind had she been? How many years had she let him decide for her, manage her money, her time, her life? She opened a new browser tab and navigated to the website of a bank where, a month ago, as if sensing something, she had opened an account in her own name. Back then, it was just a vague desire to have something of her own, independent. Now, it was a lifeline. Zahara verified the routing and account numbers, then returned to the joint account and began transferring the money. Not all at once. That would trigger a bank alert. First, $3,000. She confirmed the transaction via text message. Then another $2,000, then $4,000. Transfer after transfer, methodical and calm. Her hands didn't shake, her heart beat evenly. In about an hour, she had transferred nearly $90,000 into her personal account. Achilles would discover the depleted account in the morning and, of course, rush to the bank, shouting and demanding the money back. But the operations were legal, made from an account to which she had full access, to an account in her own name. No fraud. Zahara closed the laptop and finished the cold tea. She stood up and walked into the small room Achilles called his study. His massive mahogany desk stood there, a leather armchair, and rows of marketing and business books lined the shelves, which he never read. They were just for ambiance. A safe was built into the wall. Did Zahara know the combination? Of course. Achilles was arrogant but predictable. The code was their wedding date, June 15th, the very date he had publicly called a youthful mistake tonight. She entered the numbers. The safe clicked open. Inside were neat stacks of cash. Achilles always kept cash on hand for emergencies, distrusting banks completely. Zahara counted quickly. About $5,000 in $100 bills. She took it all. Then she pulled out documents, contracts, securities. She scanned them quickly. Stock options, bond certificates. She crammed everything into a large manila envelope. At the bottom of the safe lay a velvet box. Zahara opened it. Gold cufflinks. A gift from Achilles' father before he passed. Achilles never wore them, but cherished them as a relic. Zahara paused for a second, then took those, too. Let him feel what it was like to lose something precious. She closed the safe, spun the dial, and left the study. Next, the documents. Zahara went to the large cabinet in the living room where they kept folders of paperwork. She methodically sorted through them. The marriage certificate, her passport, the condo documents. There they were. The purchase agreement. The condo was titled to Achilles Smythe, but the contract had an appendix. A statement confirming an initial payment of $100,000 was made from the account of Zahara Smythe, her grandmother's money. Zahara took pictures of every page with her phone, then filed the originals in her own folder. In the divorce, these documents would be her trump card. Next, 3 years of bank statements. Zahara found the folder and flipped through it. There they were, transfers. Regular amounts of $500 going to an unrecognized account.